And joining us live on the broadcast from New Delhi is Veena Sikri, former Indian diplomat. Welcome to WION, Ms. Sikri. First up, we've seen how Turkey has been backing Pakistan loudly and clearly. Your assessment of that, and do you think that the current steps that India has taken against Pakistan's allies enough?
I think these are very important first steps. I think I must also mention that India strongly believes in the policy of Vasudhaiv Kutumbakam. We have tried our best to develop economic, political and social relations with all countries of the world, and Turkey has been among them. And as you have seen that over the past years, very strong and robust economic links have been developed with Turkey in education field, in the trade field and in the political relationship field. But I think the people of India have been totally shocked, totally stunned, as our Vice President just mentioned, by the steps that Turkey took during the recent conflict and hostilities with Pakistan. And immediately after the 22nd of April absolutely bestial attack on innocent tourists in Pahalgam, we saw that 6 plane loads arrived from Turkey to Pakistan, said to be carrying drones, and these were delivered to Pakistan, although it was said that no, this was just a refueling halt, etc. But there's every evidence to believe that these drones were delivered to Pakistan, and lo and behold, during the hostilities, we saw these drones coming across to India in swarms, absolutely in swarms, targeting colleges and targeting absolute innocent people, the Golden Temple, the places, the holy place of Sikhs, other temples and mosques. And it's created great anger among the people of India. All across the board, unanimously, there has been this great anger against Turkey, that we from India have been doing our best to develop relations with Turkey. Hundreds and thousands of tourists go from India to Turkey every year, and they've been fueling the economy there. We import, let's say, just 1 lakh tons of apples from Turkey every year, and also dried fruit and all kinds of other materials. So in exchange for all this, all we have got is that Turkey has been supplying drones to Pakistan, and they have been sending these drones against Indian targets, against Indian civilian targets, which has created a massive anger. We just saw on your program not only Vice President Dhankhar, but also political leader Sauddin Owaisi speaking about it, expressing complete anger at Turkey at adopting this kind of a posture. So I think the answer has been a unanimous outburst.
Right.
The Traders Association has declared themselves that they're not going to import either apples or any other products. The tour operators are cancelling tours to Turkey and not taking any fresh bookings. People, individuals are cancelling their visits. So this has created a huge furor among the people of India.
Right, Ms. Sikri, from security, aviation to education and trade, Indians have perhaps taken a strong stance against Turkey. But Ms. Sikri, I also want to talk to you about how the Pakistan government has assured to rebuild the mosques at Muridke terror base, which was destroyed in the Indian strikes. It is perhaps the same terror base where 2611 terrorist Ajmal Kasab and David Headley once trained. I want to seek your assessment as to why is Pakistan wanting to rebuild Muridke? What is perhaps the bigger game plan here from Islamabad?
Well, I think this decision only proves the intense and close linkages between terrorist organizations based in Pakistan, headquartered in Pakistan, and the Pakistan army to a greatest extent, and of course the government to a lesser extent, but the army certainly. We saw, for example, that after India's attack on the 9 headquarters and training centers of the terrorist organizations like Lashkar-e-Taiba, Jaish-e-Mohammed and others, at least 100 terrorists died in these attacks. And during the funeral ceremonies of these people, all the senior army officers were there. And they were there in full evidence. So this shows the close linkages between the army and the terrorist organizations. And this is actually something that India has been talking about all the time, but Pakistan has been on the face of it resisting that there's any truth in it. But we saw recently, 2 days ago, the British Foreign Secretary David Lammy was in Pakistan, and he told them the same thing, that stop your support for terrorist organizations. I think one of the most important points about this evidence and this statement that Pakistan government will help rebuild the headquarters in Muridke is that it seems very likely that this money for rebuilding the headquarters in Muridke is going to come from the IMF grant of $1 billion to Pakistan. Already from this IMF grant, they have announced a whopping 14 crores as assistance to the kin, to those who have lost their kin in the Indian attacks on the terrorist headquarters. So that like Masood Azhar lost, let's say, 14 people in that attack, his relatives and close aides, and he's being promised 14 crores. So money is being given from this IMF money to the terrorists, to individuals, and for rebuilding the bases. I think India has taken up this point also with the IMF. India had abstained in the voting on this assistance to Pakistan, and India had of course there is no negative voting in the IMF, so the only thing that we could do was to abstain, which is a strong indication of displeasure. And we are continuing the dialogue with IMF and explaining to them. I believe the IMF is understood to have put in very strong further linkages, etc., but let's see how these work. So we are very skeptical about it now, when right in the middle of the hostilities, IMF announces this loan for Pakistan, and certainly we are going to keep up with our pressure on these organizations and on the world communities. We have announced delegations led by members of parliament, very senior members of parliament from all political parties, who have gladly joined in communicating with the rest of the world, important capitals all across the world, about India's views on terrorism. Getting support for India's views on terrorism is very important, because we've seen the large number of innocent people who died in this attack, and the attempts to kill more innocent civilians in this.
Right, Ms. Sikri. And of course, India has urged the International Monetary Fund, the IMF, to reconsider financial aid to Pakistan, with the Pakistan government clearly saying that it wants to rebuild the Murid K terror base. But thanks very much for sharing your insights here with us on WION.